of band is this?
Everybody poops sometimes.
Give us this.
Wake up, sweetness.
Your first time should be more than special.
I'm in, Savannah said. Good Lord, Gemma.
When a man and a woman, in this case, really, really love each other, what happens is they fuck.
Ooh, hello?
Oh, dang it, I lost my fish. This next word almost sounds like Quidditch. Quidditch milade Diana Agosiagath an Fiedian. As much as I love fucking you, sweetness, we stared into each other's eyes whilst I moaned in ecstasy. Having consumed half of the bourbon, I keep saying bourbon. You know, every time I mess up on a word, Stunt Mama just shows up.
She had her seductive smile on her lips.
I said we couldn't have sex. I didn't say anything about everything else. Ew. Happy to help. Biatch. You are the spark of light in the vastness of my night. His note, like a finality to a beautiful, breathtaking song. Good evening. Hello, hello, hello. How are ya? Gray, good to see you. And Kay's here. Hi, Kay. Love the antlers? Oh, thank you. I just grew them this evening. Yes, it's been quite a day, has it not? Welcome to Thursday. I almost forgot. Tonight is... Well, I didn't forget that it was Iron Flame. I forgot to put this message up. Iron Flame in Discord tonight. Yeah. I'm mad. I missed Sunday. I fell asleep. Well, it sounds like you needed the sleep. You don't have to be mad about that. Nope. Sounds like you needed the sleep. Plus, you're able to listen online, right? If you wanted to, that is. No pressure. You're in a perpetual state of exhaustion, I have no doubt. It does not shock me one bit, knowing what you're dealing with. So, I'm glad you could be here now. It's great to see you. And let's see if my shout-outs are working. Aha.
Error sound, literally.
It's one of mine. Fantastic. Great to see you too. I've missed you. Oh, thank you. Oh, it's a little hard to see on the screen, but that's the puzzle tonight. Aw, Stunt Mama's mama. Hello. 27 months in a row. Good grief. Thank you so much. Thank you. Where is my... There it is. Let's spin. Oh, streamer picks. And Stomp Papa, hi sir. Hey broski, lurking while I do some school stuff. See you tonight. Get that school stuff done. Get her done, son. Streamer picks. Okay. Oh gosh. Might as well just add it to some more curls, right? Might as well. And since we're here, we'll just
switch over to the reading screen. Oh boy. It is great to see you all. I'm happy to be here. It's been a weird but good week, you know. I've been off for a while because of the move and getting things set up. And it does look like we live here now, so that's great. But I had to go back to work. That's the thing. Got to do that. But it was just kind of odd. Because I've been used to, like, just go, go, go. Where's this box going to go? What's in there? Let's put that away. Let's assemble this thing. I've assembled so many things. And then to kind of just dramatically slow down on all that stuff. It was weird. It was very weird. But that's fine. Go back to the usual rhythm of things. And then we'll have Christmas. Which we are not ready for. We look like we're ready. But we're not. All right. That's what we've been doing at the son's house, assembling things. Nice. Yeah. It's amazing how hot and sweaty you can get putting things together with an Allen wrench and a screwdriver. Just saying. Oh, that is hot. Wowzers, that's hot. But it tastes good. You know, I'm going to leave the lid off to let it cool down a bit. Okay. We are in the wonderful story of Song for Someone. It's been a pleasure to read so far. Been very much enjoying it. And just put that right there. I'm very much looking forward to seeing where this goes. We're about to start chapter 4. And I noticed something last time. All the chapters up to this point, all 3 of them. Well, I guess 4, since I'm staring at it. They all say chapter 4, Charlotte Sapori, our character. So I'm assuming at some point it's going to switch and say chapter whatever somebody else. So I guess we'll see. But in the meantime, I'm going to adjust this light. Hopefully that's not too bright. I added a little extra light to my desk so that I didn't have to have the one above my head on. Because when I do that, I get this weird shadow thing. So we don't want to do that. So we'll see how this goes. Still need to be able to see the words. All right. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and I will Mad Locust Rising. I'm just kidding. I will read you a story. Hi, Mad Locust. How are you? All right. Chapter 4. After the memorial service, we returned to Les Salles for the wake. We scattered Mother's ashes in the beautiful tranquil garden behind the barn. And what an afternoon it was. Francesco and Ludo planted a rose bush as a lasting, living memorial to Mother's memory. There was a moment of silence in which everyone was lost in an ocean of grief. The thought that the rest of the world could carry on with dazzling grace when she was no longer with us seemed wrong. We drank copious amounts of wine and whiskey. We played music on the gramophone, raising a toast to the iconic Irene Adler, opera singer, friend, philanthropist, mother, and wife. I closed my eyes, basking in the afternoon sun, wondering what it must have been like 32 years ago when my parents first arrived in Fiesole. Could be better. Got a broken rib and I don't remember what happened. Never drinking that much again. Thank you for the alert, Gray. Holy buckets. You know, I've heard ribs are pretty easy to break, or at least dislocate. But wow, I mean, you must have really hit yourself. Hopefully it's not too painful to breathe, although I imagine it probably is. Gosh, I'm sorry to hear that. Let that be a lesson to you. Never do that again. You fell a few times, you think? Wow. I am so sorry. Hopefully they've taken good care of you. Hopefully you've got something to help with the pain. My fingers are crossed for a speedy recovery. Well, you've come to the right spot, as always. You can chill out, relax, and hopefully you'll drift off to sleep without rolling over. Later that afternoon, Nico, Javier, and I performed one of my mother's favorite modern-day compositions, Careless Love Blues. Wow, I fall into things but never make it to the floor. Okay. The bright young things from the Roaring Twenties were doing a new dance called the Charleston. They dominated the newspapers with outrageous fashions and indulgent lifestyles, loosening morals and sexual inhibitions. But, of course, my father took a dim view of all of it, much to my mother's amusement. She was far more liberally minded in such matters and always made a point of championing those of her sex vilified by men. Hi, Mama House Gaming and Lady Lurky, hello. My goodness, where have you been? Haven't seen you in a hot minute. It just barely showed up that you were streaming 20 minutes later. Well, that's okay. I thought you were, could have swore you were playing a game. I think. So much has happened offline? Yeah, I bet it has. No? Okay. Maybe that was somebody else I saw pop up. Either way, good to see you. Glad to see you. Oh, you logged in to get my points. So I did. Okay, I wasn't hallucinating. At least that I'm aware of. Got it. You were getting points. That always makes sense. You got to get those. Well, Lady Lurky, I hope some of the things that happened offline weren't all terrible. I hope. Another Batman. That's the most popular voice redeem I get. They were pretty good. Okay, well that's good. I'm glad to hear it. All right. I'm Batman. I've also lost my place. Oh, wait, never mind. I got it. Mother and Nico were huge fans of an artist who became known as the father of jazz, Buddy Bolden. They adored Buddy Bolden's blues, such as Funky Butt. My brother was a talented singer, blessed with a fine baritone voice. He also played several musical instruments in Gotham, including the pianoforte, the cello, and violin. Nico would have made a fine musician if he had not become a doctor. He and Mother had tried in vain to get Father interested in jazz. Nico explained to my bemused father that people didn't realize they wanted jazz until they heard it for the first time. Father would have none of it, describing jazz as insolent noise, preferring to listen to his beloved German composers, Wagner and Beethoven. Batman was really pissed there for a minute about this jazz music. I'm Batman. There was a piano in the drawing room. One evening, my father asked me to play for him. First Schubert, then one of my mother's compositions, a piece she wrote during a weekend in Harrogate the Christmas before she died. I have fond memories of that time. Mother had spent most of the last 3 decades fundraising for underprivileged children. Then, finally, she became a patron of Dr. Bernardo's. They said her philanthropic spirit and generosity had made an enormous difference in the lives of so many children. Father had intended to accompany her to a fundraiser and Christmas carol concert in Harrogate, but unfortunately, the day before they were due to travel, he was called away to work in Lewisham on what he described as a pressing matter. He asked if I would take his place, explaining that he had booked a spa hotel, the Black Swan, as a surprise. On the 10th of December, Mother and I set off from King's Cross on our train journey to Harrogate. A bitterly cold east wind blew as we boarded the train and settled into the first-class carriage Father had insisted on booking. And I'm so glad he did. Not because I'm a snob, far from it, but because the train was full of commuters snuggling close together and children pressing their faces against the windows as they traveled home for the festive season. We were due to arrive in Harrogate just after 3 o'clock, but there was a delay on the line. When we reached York Station, we learned that a Yorkshire Terrier had fallen between the train and the platform gap, forcing us to wait for the conductor to arrive. He finally managed to free the dog, to the delight of the commuters waiting on the platform. The porter reunited the dog with its owner, an elderly lady in a mink coat. We were pleased the dog was safe, but it meant we didn't arrive at our hotel until 5 o'clock. This barely gave us time to change and organize a hansom to take us to the theater. We had no time for dinner. Mother was naturally magnificent. She walked onto the stage of that delightful theater, dressed in a striking peacock blue gown, two rapturous applause. She sang the opening Christmas carol, O Holy Night, also known as Cantique de Noël, accompanied by the Harrogate Male Voice Choir. Seeing the reaction from the audience, I gasped and thought, my God, I'm actually in the presence of an icon. My dazzling, wonderful mother had lost none of her captivating aura despite her advanced years. Now there I sat, floored yet again by this incredible woman. At the concert's end, a diminutive elderly lady dressed in a black silk dress and hat presented Mother with an award for children's services. Then we hailed a cab and returned to our hotel. We were relieved to find the dining room still open, as we hadn't eaten since breakfast. By the time we finished dinner, the dining room was almost empty, save for a lady sitting on her own at an adjoining table, nursing a cup of tea. She was wearing a black, sparkling evening dress, so we assumed she must have come from the dance, as the band was still in full swing next door at the Palm Court. Mother introduced herself, inviting the lady to come join us for drinks. The lady smiled. She recognized the great Irene Adler. She told us she was quite a fan of the opera, Wagner being one of her favorite composers. The lady came over to join us and introduced herself as Nancy Tresser. Anyone else picture keep freezing? Not mine. It might be either internet or Twitch. Might just need to refresh, okay? Possibly. I'm sorry it's freezing. It is a little cold out. Nancy was in her late 30s with dark, wavy hair swept off her face. Rexter! Twitch is twitchy today. It sure is. It sure is. It's good to see you, sir. Dark, wavy hair swept off her face. Deep-set, dark eyes with well-defined brows. Full lips and a rather aquiline nose. I remember she was tall. Nancy declined Nen's offer of wine, explaining she was a teetotal, so Mother ordered coffee for us and a pot of Earl Grey for Nancy. Hello, hello. It's good to see you, sir. We spoke at length until the subject eventually came around to music and composers. Mother said she... What? Oh, yeah. Mother said she attempted to write a few of her own compositions over the years. Nancy appeared intrigued and asked if Nen would play a little for her. She gestured towards the grand piano in the lounge. Nancy and I stood around the piano as Mother began to play melancholy music. Appreciating the beautiful melody, which flowed with ease, I looked at my mother with a raised eyebrow. But how on earth do you even begin to write a song? Mother laughed. Well, I begin with a few chords and find a melody. She ran her fingers over the keyboard effortlessly, playing the first few bars of Where My Love Dies Dreaming. Do you think this will catch on? She asked, laughing softly at my puzzled expression. My dear Charlotte, I long ago resigned myself to the fact I will never emulate Beethoven or the great Stephen Foster. I should stick to singing. We retired to the dining room and our conversation continued. Nancy told us her mother had recently passed away. She was staying in the hotel on her own. We noticed she wore a wedding band, although she never explained why she was alone, and we and we felt it inappropriate to ask. Mitchell, hello. I need to move this light. It is not helping with the shadows. Let's try directly in front of me. Good Lord, that's much better. Why did I not think of this sooner? I lost my place again. I'm really good at that. Oh yes, inappropriate to ask. Very good. Eventually, Nancy made her excuses and retired for the night, politely declining Mother's offer to join us for dinner the following evening. I remember thinking how fortunate I was to be part of a family that loved me unconditionally and would do anything for me. The thought of my parents parting ways made me shudder. I like the light effects from the bottom. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. The following morning, after breakfast, Mother and I went into town for a little Christmas shopping. I bought candy, which I would too, fudge, and some toffee for Nico from Farah's old sweet shop, presented in a gorgeous blue and silver tin. Then I picked up a box of my father's favorite Cuban cigars from the tobacconist. Our next stop was Louis Cope's Emporium on Parliament Street, famous for its bespoke off-the-peg haute couture. Queen Mary was said to be a customer. Fancy. Queen Mary herself, I do say. Just delicious. Mother bought me a delightful dress of silk Canton crepe in contrasting tones of red and black with metallic thread, along with a pair of black patent leather pumps and 2 pairs of grey silk stockings. She then chose a Poirier sheen coat for herself in grey, delicate and soft, to which she had an aristocratic air of elegance when she tried it on. Departing from the store 2 hours later, we had afternoon tea at Betty's before returning to the hotel, where we spent the rest of the afternoon relaxing in the spa. After we arrived home on Tuesday afternoon and read the newspapers, Mother and I were shocked to discover we had been in the company of Agatha Christie. She was reported missing several days earlier and checked into the hotel under the same name of her husband's mistress. Again, Mother and I were stunned. We just prayed that things would work out for her. Agatha Christie would, of course, become a prolific author. I had already read her first 3 novels, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, The Murder on the Links, and The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, much to my father's bemusement. I have vivid memories of my mother rehearsing the song she composed that Christmas. She made me promise I would play it for Father if anything happened to her. The melody reminded her of a time in her life when she was estranged from my father, when they thought they would never see each other again. It was entitled Emergence. I smiled nervously at my father. This was a dedication to you from my mother. She asked if I would play it for you. Father looked at me curiously. A flicker of a smile appeared on his face as he nodded his approval. I began to play. The haunting melody moved my father to tears. That was the first and only time I'd ever seen him cry. Father was stoic by nature. Unlike most men of his time and generation, crying did not come easily to him. But being in the barn wasn't only a poignant reminder of my father's return to the place that had offered him and my mother sanctuary all those years ago. This was also where they had fallen in love. After I finished, I sat with my father on the patio, taking his hand in mine. I kissed him on the cheek. He smiled back at me through his tears. Charlotte, when you were sitting there playing that beautiful melody, it took my breath away. You look just like her, your mother. You may take that as a compliment, young lady. Your mother was the most beautiful woman I have ever laid eyes on. I stared at him curiously. I read your journals, yours and Mother's. The hill of Calvary she spoke of, the night before she died. That was a secret code between the two of you, wasn't it? It was her way of letting you know that, well, what was about to happen. Father nodded. We need to talk, Charlotte. I know you have questions, and you deserve answers, but not tonight. I am exhausted. Tomorrow, after dinner, we shall talk then. I promise, I will tell you everything you need to know. And that is the end of chapter 4. So there you go, a little bit of history prior to Irene Adler's death. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I always wondered, like, there's been many people that have played Sherlock Holmes as a character, but you never really know what someone might actually sound like. I mean, same goes for Irene Adler for that fact, but I don't think I can do as a convincing Irene Adler as I could perhaps a Sherlock Holmes. But yeah, characters like that, it always makes you wonder. Everyone doing all right? Cozy? Comfy? A little bit of both? I need another sip. Stump Mama says, yep. Excellent. Stump Mama. Stump Mama's mama. Chapter 5 is called The Death of Godfrey Norton. Irene Adler. The Death of Godfrey Norton. Let's check it out. London, 13th February 1893. It was a chilly, gray February morning, the kind of day that made people yearn for spring. The early morning fog was beginning to rise as Polly Hawkins disembarked from the omnibus that terminated at Ludgate Hill. Polly shivered as she fastened the top button of her mute black long coat, wrapping her scarf tightly around her neck and pulling her black felt hat firmly down over her ears to protect her from the icy north wind and to prepare her for the 8-minute walk to Fleet Street. That's a long walk in the cold. Walking briskly through the temple, she passed the snow-covered dome of St. Paul's Cathedral, hovering in the background. Polly turned into Fleet Street, home of the infamous Ye Olde Cherish Cheese Tavern. Cherish Cheese Tavern. Say that 10 times fast. Cherish Cheese Tavern. Cherish Cheese Tavern. It's totally fine. A favored watering hole of the solicitors and lawyers who resided in the temple. The tavern had been rebuilt shortly after the Great Fire of London in 1666. It was steeped in history and said to have been frequented by numerous literary figures, including Charles Dickens, Samuel Johnson, Alfred Tennyson, and Mark Twain. Not yet 7 o'clock, Fleet Street was already alive with activity as hansom cabs and broughams trotted down the straw-covered street. The hustle and bustle added an air of anticipation. Domestic servants thronged the road, walking or cycling their way to work. Men in dark suits and bowler hats went about their business. Chimney sweeps, crossing sweepers, tavern owners, and shop vendors called out to each other as they prepared to open. Trying to imagine what some of those conversations sounded like. Just like that. Polly walked past several solicitors' offices before finally reaching Gibbs, Robinson, and Starkey solicitors, commissioners for oaths, and notary public. She ran up the front steps, admiring the smartly painted black front door with gleaming brass door knockers and plaques nestling beneath the bell pull, each bearing the names and qualifications of its partners and associates. Polly smiled with pride at the gleaming brass. Scrubbing the steps and polishing the brasses was her blah blah blah. Let's try that again. Scrubbing the steps and polishing the brasses was her responsibility, a job she carried out meticulously every morning. Removing a glove, she held on to the railings as she fumbled in her bag for the front door key. The clock of St. Dunstan's Church was chiming 7. Polly noticed the front door was ajar. Mr. Jones must have come in early again, which was not unusual. That was one of his little peculiarities. Hanging up her hat, scarf, coat, and bag in the scullery, Polly walked into the kitchen. She filled the kettle and removed 2 mugs and a tea caddy from her overhead cupboard, as she expected her friend, Daisy Moffat, to join her shortly. She wished Daisy would hurry, as it was her turn to fetch the milk. Daisy was a fellow domestic servant responsible for cleaning the first floor of the building. Late again, Daisy had recently confided to Polly that she'd been having problems at home with her husband, Ted. Daisy suspected he was carrying on with another woman. Polly put on her white mop cap, carefully pushing the loose strands of flaming red hair underneath. Tying a white apron around her long black cotton dress, she checked her reflection in the kitchen mirror. A slim, diminutive girl of 20 years stared back at her with a pale, freckled face and round, animated blue eyes. She removed a coal scuttle from the cupboard under the stairs in the hallway. She was just about to go back into the kitchen when she heard the distinct sound of raised voices coming from Mr. Jones's office. Polly sighed. She'd have to wait to clean the grate in his room and set the fire, which would set her back. Shaking her head, she tutted, deciding to clean the grate in the kitchen instead. Polly considered asking Mr. Jones if he wanted a cup of tea, then thought better of it. First of all, there was no fresh milk. And second, Mr. Jones had a client with him. He never liked to be disturbed whilst he was working. Besides, she was sure he would ring the bell if he wanted anything. He knew she came in at 7 o'clock, regular as clockwork. "Polly, put the kettle on," he would shout to her, laughing at his own joke. Other mornings she would be lucky to get a grunt out of him. The raised voices continued. Polly stood motionless, unsure what to do. She was not expecting the other lawyers to arrive before luncheon. Michael Turner was usually first on the scene after Mr. Jones. In his mid-20s, Turner was the youngest of the solicitors. Mr. Gibb had been dead for quite some time. The senior partners, Mr. Starkey and Mr. Robinson, both had cases at the Old Bailey that morning. Polly strained her ears, trying to make out what they were saying. The second man appeared to be doing most of the talking. Polly picked out the odd curse from the muffled voices. She raised her eyebrows, recognizing some of the words from her nights spent as a barmaid at the King's Head public house, her second job. She and her fiancé, Jack Taylor, were saving up to get married. Jack didn't like Polly working at the King's Head, but they needed the money, and the extra work would be worth it in the end. Jack had reluctantly agreed, although he insisted on meeting Polly at the end of her shift and walking her home. Jack was a good man. Just turned 25, he worked long, hard hours as an apprentice butcher at Smithfield Market. For a moment, the voices went quiet, and then a blood-curdling scream erupted through the air. Polly stood in the corridor, petrified, unable to move. Mr. Jones's office door swung open. She could see a man running towards her, his face blacker than any thunderstorm. The man appeared, shocked to see Polly. He glared at her with furrowed brow, cursing under his breath. A blood-stained knife glinted in his right hand. Polly could hear her heart hammering in her chest. The man hesitated, his cold, blue eyes boring into her. Polly noticed a scar running down from his ear to his cheekbone and realized that she recognized him from the King's Head. He was Wild Bill Palmer, the leader of the notorious Tooley Street Gang, rumored to be a former henchman of the late Professor Moriarty. Ah, Professor Moriarty. Not a nice guy. Splashes of blood dotted his shirt. She closed her eyes. A sensation of wetness trickled down her legs as she waited for him to stab her. Polly's thoughts turned to Jack and his comely freckled face. She began to cry. Large, salty tears ran down her cheeks. She could smell the man's breath on her face, the stench of stale beer, tobacco, and brandy. She felt the cold blade of the knife on her neck. She was shaking, uncontrollably, speaking to the man in a hoarse whisper, barely recognizing her own voice. Please, don't hurt me, mister. I'm expecting a little. The man hesitated for a moment before roughly knocking her to the floor. She fell onto her side, winded from the fall. She lay on the ground for several minutes and struggled to catch her breath. Then came the unmistakable sound of the front door slamming. Breathing a sigh of relief, Polly almost laughed. Who would have thought that the weight she put on over Christmas would save her life? Jack would gently tease her about her weight gain. Who ate all the mince pies? He would mock before she whacked him over the head with a newspaper. Not that he minded. Polly wasn't an unhealthy weight by any stretch of the imagination, and Jack preferred more curves on a woman. Polly stood up slowly, holding onto the wall, her legs shaking, her black lace boots scuffing along the floor. She tentatively tiptoed towards Mr. Jones's office. A deathly silence had fallen, apart from the clock ticking in the hallway. Her heart was pounding, almost in sync with the clock. She pushed the door. It opened, slowly, creaking upon its hinges. Polly glanced around the office, which was in a state of wild disarray. Books, papers, and files littered across the floor. The safe was half open. Pictures hung off the walls. The Chesterfield settee had been pushed over on its side, its cushions slashed. Her eyes darted towards Mr. Jones' desk. What she saw cut her to the quick. Mr. Jones' lifeless body lay sprawled in a twisted heap over the desk, his eyes wide open in a terrible fixed stare. His once crisp white shirt was now crimson, blood dripping off the desk into the carpet below. Polly ran out of the office as fast as her legs would carry her. Once on the pavement, once on the street, she screamed hysterically. A man standing on the pavement grabbed her tightly by the shoulders. Polly closed her eyes, thinking the worst, that the intruder had returned. The man spoke to her softly, gently releasing his grip. Polly recognized the crystal-cut, well-modulated voice. She opened her lids, crying out with utter relief. She had fallen straight into the arms of Michael Turner. Polly told me of the above shocking events when I visited her at home in Islington 3 days after Godfrey's murder. And that is the end of chapter 5. Katie, it's so great to see you. Why are you up this late? Wonderful stuff. Thank you. It's your book. I am just a storyteller. Night Marcher, it's good to see you, sir. That game you were playing today definitely caught my attention. I have it installed. I'm waiting for the campaign to come out because I'm more of a campaign player than a PvP. But based on what I was seeing, it looks like it's going to be a good one. She's a sucker for punishment, maybe? Perhaps. You're doing last-minute edits for your latest book. Okay. Burning that candle at both ends. I understand. I really do. While we're in between chapters, Mama House Gaming, can we please get some lovely shoutouts? One for yourself, which I will do, and one for the Night Marcher. There she is. What is she doing? I can't tell in the video. That's all right. That was a lovely reading.
When you host somebody, regardless of the number of people that you host them for, like if it's 0 to 100, like every single host matters.
Absolutely. Every single one.
We got drinks.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, indeed. Yes, Night Marcher, that is correct. It's just not out yet. It hasn't been released. Probably will get released when the full game drops, since it's just a beta right now. Oh. I thought you were going to slice your thumb off there in that video. Or whoever that was. Well, I hope everyone's having a fabulous evening. Or time zone. Who else do we have in chat? I know Lady Lurky used to stream. I don't know if she still does. Oh yeah, I need to change that command. Totally forgot. Because Stream Elements thinks that we're trying to play a song, but we're not. Talking about an amazing book instead. All right. Let's see. I need to stretch my legs, and I owe 10 curls. I have the weights behind me on the floor. So I'm going to stretch my legs, do those curls, and then we'll get back into the book. Okay? Okay. Good chat. Oh, thank you. All right. There we go. Back to 0. Let's see. And we have an ad starting in 9 minutes as well. I will take a drink. Thank you. I'm going to run the ads, and then that way we don't get interrupted in the next chapter. So, apologies. I run 2-minute ads so that we get about an hour of peace and quiet. So I'm going to run those now. You won't miss anything. You can't even hear me because I'm talking. Although it depends where you live. Some people get ads and some people don't. It's very odd. Tell you what, the new house setup, it's been so great. I have been able to, in the mornings, do my bench press, which has been phenomenal. And then in the evenings, I have an ab roller that I've been using. And then, of course, I've got my free weights here if I want to do that. But I've been able to get back into like a rhythm, and it's been so great to be able to do that. Because I have let things go, let me tell you. Not in a great way. So I actually can feel my abs now. I mean, there's still a gut there, but the muscles behind them, they're really starting to come out again and be like, huh, what? So that's been nice. Yeah. I'm only doing, so that's a tricky thing with my, oh my God, what are you doing? Moog. Hi, Gemma. Moog. You didn't have to come and raid me.
Well, obviously, I'm a genius, and just knew that they were. Oh, God.
Best clip. Obviously, I'm a genius, and oh, God. That was fantastic. Moog, thank you so much for raiding me. I technically raided myself. but I'll deal with that later. Gosh, that was super kind of you. You didn't have to do that. Mama House, she changes her hair color, I won't say very often, but from time to time, and she always picks really cool colors. And she nails it every time. The new setup, yes. So, wait, that view right there is... You can't see my arm, but it's everything going on behind me. And then of course I've got my recording studio in here, fully soundproofed. It's fantastic. I just did curls behind me because I had to do them, redeems. But yeah, it's new house, new place, new office, new recording studio, new everything. It's been amazing. I was just actually saying how great it's been to get back into a routine again of being able to do some more regular workouts. And so yeah, it's been great. I have to be careful on how much weight I do though. Right now on my bench press, it's just the bar plus two 25-pound weights. So about 60 pounds in total. So it's nothing crazy. I'm going to add tomorrow morning 2 10s, a 10 on each side, just to start to bump it up a little bit. But with my heart condition, I have to be careful. I can't go overboard. But anyway, enough about that. Thank you so much for rating me. I'm shaking the desk. For those of you that don't know who I am the Bookfather. I, shockingly, by the name, I read books and I voice act. And that's why I have this space, which is covered in black foam. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. We're actually about to get back into a book called Song for Someone. It's a fantastic read so far. Exclamation point song, if you want to know more about it. See what else our wonderful author has gotten up to. Stream Elements will think you're trying to play a song as well. But that's besides the point. So yes, Moog, if you need to raid and run, totally understand. Absolutely. I thank you for thinking of me. You are a gem. And I adore you. And if I ever make it over to where you live, or at least the general area, because I don't obviously know exactly where you live, I will tell you, because I would love to meet up and give you a big old hug. Okay? That would be amazing. All right. Back to our story. We're on chapter 6, page 40 in the printed copy. Chapter 6 is called February 1893, Irene Adler. Here we go. I shall never forget the events of that ill-fated day. When I heard the doorbell ring, I was alone in the dining room at my home, Laburnum Villa, located in sedate Kensington Square, not Kensington, Kensington. Our housemaid Bertha entered the room a few minutes later to advise me that Inspector Lestrade from the Metropolitan Police was asking to see me. Entering the parlor with some trepidation, I found the inspector and his sergeant waiting for me, an expression of the utmost gravity on their faces. The inspector showed me his badge before asking me to take a seat. Mrs. Jones, said Lestrade in a booming voice, I'm afraid there's no easy way to say this, but we have found a body this morning which we believe to be that of your husband, Godfrey Lucian Jones. He was found dead at his place of employment.
we have reason to believe that foul play was involved. Fortunately, we do have an eyewitness who was at the crime scene. They have been able to give us a detailed description of the perpetrator. A murder inquiry is underway, and we believe we are close to finding him. Mrs. Jones. Very close, indeed. I stared hard at Lestrade, fighting back the tears. I could hear the inspector's words ringing in my ears. He sounded as though he were speaking from inside a tunnel. But why would anyone want to kill my husband? What reason would they have to murder him? I don't know, Mrs. Jones, said Lestrade, but we will get to the truth of the matter, I assure you. We will know more after the autopsy report. The only thing I can tell you right now is that your husband was assaulted. My sergeant and I would like to extend our condolences. Lestrade hesitated for a moment. We appreciate this must be a challenging time, but we need somebody to identify your husband's body. Would you be willing to take a look? We could ask one of the partners at the firm if you don't feel up to it. I shook my head. No, I will do it, Inspector. I don't want you to bother Godfrey's work colleagues. That wouldn't be fair. Godfrey's parents are both dead. He has no siblings. I'm his wife. It's down to me. I took a deep breath. How I wished my beloved father Alfred was there to console and comfort me. He was expected to arrive in London on Saturday. I could hardly wait to see him. We set off to the mortuary. When the mortician pulled back the sheet from Godfrey's face, I gasped. I stared in horror at the translucent alabaster skin and pale blue pallor of his lips and face. His eyes were closed, but there was no doubt this was Godfrey. I was utterly traumatized by Godfrey's death. Although things had not been good between us, and I was about to leave him, I would never have wished him dead. Lestrade smiled at me gently. I'm much obliged for your assistance, Mrs. Jones. My sergeant will take you home now. We will keep you updated on any fresh developments. Sergeant Green summoned a carriage and escorted me back to Kensington. I immediately retired to my bedroom. Sitting on the bed, I cried unceasingly. Godfrey's senseless death had left me completely shattered and totally unprepared for the intensity of my feelings. My husband had been a complicated man, cold, mean-spirited, a bully and a sadist. How often I prayed for him to disappear from my life. And now, he was gone? The guilt ate away at me. After crying myself into a troubled sleep, my mind drifted back to the events that transpired on that fateful August night 5 months earlier. However, it felt as though it had only been yesterday when the perception of my world changed forever. Every night in my dreams, I relived each excruciating moment. Late evening. I was disturbed by the sound of the bedroom door opening with a savage abruptness. I turned my head to find Godfrey standing in the open, staring at me grimly. My blood ran cold. I had become accustomed to living in constant fear of the dark scowl that appeared on his face with the slightest provocation, the violent threats.
the coarse sneers I endured daily. Godfrey's altered mood and mental state was the result of his heavy drinking and opium addiction. Nin, said Godfrey, I need £500 to pay off a gambling debt. I must have this money now or I won't be able to show my face in front of Monesy again. Well, surely that can't be a bad thing, I retorted. Godfrey's scowl turned into a bitter smile. I must have the money now. I'm about to enter a winning streak. Muscroft fancies his horse in the first at Newmarket tomorrow. Don't you see? When it wins, I'll be back in the game. You wouldn't recognize a winning streak if it fell in front of you, Godfrey. How dare you speak to me this way? I am your wife, although you seldom treat me as such. Tell me, what exactly am I to you? A spoiled rich bitch with a pretty face. Godfrey bellowed. A deep scowl marred his once handsome features. I cannot remember the last time I asked you for money. Godfrey, this is the second time this month you have asked me. I can't keep doing this. His face flushed with rage, Godfrey raised his fist, smacking me hard across the face. With a sickening thud, I fell onto the bed, striking my head against the bedpost. Godfrey cried out in anguish. He must have realized he'd gone too far. He reached out his hand to help me up, but I recoiled at his touch. The last thing I wanted was for him to come anywhere near me. Not surprisingly, Godfrey became offended, as if he had any right to be so. He slapped me again before climbing onto the bed. His features contorted into a spasm of vengeful hatred and pain. He bound a dressing gown cord around my neck and squeezed tightly. I tried in vain to push him away. That proved impossible for Godfrey was far too strong. I could feel his hot, sour breath on my face as his lecherous lips ravaged my unresponsive mouth, wincing in pain as he forced himself inside me. Come on, Nin, he sneered. I love it when you fight back a little. I know you like it rough. I felt another painful sting across my face as Godfrey smacked me again. I felt something prodding at my flesh. I instinctively tried to get away from the knife, but I couldn't move. So I'm just checking the rest of the text because I don't want to read something that's going to be too much. I'm going to skip a couple of paragraphs. Not because it's poorly written or anything like that, Katie. I just, I don't read anything that blurs the line of assault. And even though these two are married, it is definitely an assault situation. I want to make sure folks that are listening are safe here with me. So I'm just going to skip a couple of paragraphs. Thank you very much for understanding. I appreciate it. It's well written. As what I skimmed through, it's well written. It would impact too many people. Look at the ears on this sexy beast. Oh my god. Super. Thank you for the 26 months. And in a row, no less. Let me spin the wheel. My goodness. Push-ups. That was the shortest clip I've ever seen of yours. Can we do another one? I don't even think there was any sound to that clip. Those ears are mesmerizing. Well, I do try.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Are you guys in the game again?
Are you single male seeking female?
It's even funnier knowing that that's Rhino, your brother, asking you if you're a single female seeking male. Slightly awkward. Oh boy. Or wait, I shouldn't be shouting out you. I need to be shouting out the after hours broalition. I forget that all the time. Oh, look, it's Super again. You know, if I do the light right, I can make myself look very menacing. Gotta... one of those things. I lost my place. Oh, no, wait. I know where we are. Okay. Godfrey rolled over on the bed when he'd finished, immediately falling into a deep sleep, snoring like a pig. I dragged myself out of bed and staggered into the bathroom and recoiled in horror upon seeing my reflection in the mirror. My cheeks flamed scarlet. Livid bruises covered my face and body. I had a black eye where Godfrey had punched me. Blood gushed from my nose and mouth. Inspecting the wound under my left breast, I dabbed it with alcohol before covering it with a clean bandage. God, that must have stung. I consumed painkillers and brandy, which did little to dull the pain. I lay in the bath for hours, broken and humiliated, scrubbing my body until it was red. I felt as though I would never be clean again. The following day, I confronted Godfrey at breakfast. He looked at me sheepishly. The bruises on my face, a painful reminder of the shocking abuse he had inflicted the night before. I greeted Godfrey with a cold stare before throwing an envelope onto the table. I want you to know, Godfrey, that this is the last money you will ever receive from me. I will no longer support your depraved lifestyle. From this evening onwards, you will sleep in your own room. I don't want you to touch me ever again. Do you understand? And if I refuse, what will you do? He sneered. I will kill you. Godfrey stared at me hard. Excuse me. Something in the way I had spoken to him, the hard glint in my eyes, appeared to have unnerved him. He shrugged and laughed as he picked up the envelope from the table and walked out of the room. A few months later, during a routine visit to my doctor, I was discovered to be pregnant. I decided to leave Godfrey for good. I could not allow my child to be brought up in a toxic environment. I wrote a long letter to my father, Alfred Adler, in Trenton, New Jersey. My father was a widower, recently retired as a history, economics, and constitutional law professor at Rutgers University. I informed my father that I intended to leave Godfrey. However, I decided not to tell Godfrey or my father about the child. My father's response was immediate. He messaged to say he'd booked his passage on the SS Berlin with American Line. He would depart the following Wednesday and disembark in Southampton 10 days later. When the hansom cab pulled up outside my house in Kensington on Saturday morning, my father had no idea that Godfrey was dead. He stepped out of the cab, a tall, clean-shaven, distinguished-looking man, just over 6 feet tall. He was dressed in a light linen suit with a watch chain on his vest. His striking blue eyes were concealed behind half-moon glasses. I fell straight into my bemused father's arms, hugging him tightly, crying out with relief. During dinner that evening, I gently relayed all that had transpired with Godfrey and my subsequent pregnancy. The coroner had released Godfrey's body. My father took over all the arrangements. He visited Hollywell's, the undertakers, to organize Godfrey's funeral. A quiet, somber affair. Only my father, 3 of Godfrey's work colleagues, and a couple of domestic servants attend the church service at the interment at Bropton Cemetery, not ceremony. The day was cold, drizzly, and grey. I shivered as Godfrey's coffin was lowered into the ground, and my father threw a handful of soil over the coffin. I could not cry. I felt numb. When my father and I returned home, we were shocked to discover that the house had been broken into, the back gate swinging off its hinges. The servants arrived ahead of us. Having disturbed the burglars, they had already alarmed the police. Father and I searched the house. We were relieved to discover that nothing of value appeared to be missing. Later that evening, Father and I dined together. I had little appetite, feeling exhausted and unwell. Excusing myself, I kissed my father, bidding him good night before retiring to my bedroom, where I fell into a deep sleep. I felt a sharp pain in my side. Then I noticed blood on the bedclothes. Dragging myself to the bathroom, I stared at the blood flowing down my legs. I had gone into premature labor. I cried out in anguish. The midwife was called. A small, dark-haired Irish woman, a track to Sweeney, swiftly arrived. She delivered my child, a girl. She only lived for 20 minutes, her lungs too weak to support her. A tractor wrapped the baby in a towel and gently placed her in my arms. A single, gut-wrenching howl escaped from my lips as she took her last breath. A heavy silence engulfed the room for quite some time. Atracta never left my side, holding on to me as I collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Smiling at me sympathetically, Atracta spoke. I lost a child too. My son. His name was Connor. They won't issue a birth certificate, but they can't stop you from naming your daughter. What will you call her? Rosemary Blue? I said. rosemary after my favorite flowers, and for the remembrance. Take your time, Atracta said. When you're ready, we can wash and dress her and take a photograph if you wish. I thanked Atracta, then glanced down at my baby girl and kissed her gently on the forehead. My child was so perfect. She looked as though she was sleeping. When Atracta finally left, I stared at the ceiling. Life felt cold, meaningless, and cruel. My father made arrangements with the undertakers for Rosemary's funeral. After the service, he arranged to see a specialist at a private clinic on Harley Street, where I was admitted as a patient. After a thorough internal examination and minor operation, the specialist arranged a meeting at his surgery to discuss his findings. My father and I found ourselves sitting opposite the eminent gynecologist Dr. Patrick Conlon, a tall, imposing-looking man with black hair and a handlebar mustache. Mrs. Jones, he started. The loss of your child under such tragic circumstances has unfortunately caused complications known as intrauterine adhesions. There is currently no clear evidence or method to prevent adverse pregnancy outcomes. However, medicine continues to progress. The first case was only published last year by Heinrich Frischt, who I understand is making remarkable progress. We were able to remove some of the adhesions, although there is no guarantee that these adhesions will not reappear in the future. Unfortunately, this condition has seriously diminished your chances of conception or of carrying a child to full term in the unlikely event that you were to become pregnant should you choose to marry again. I am sorry I don't have better news for you. My father stood. Smiling grimly, he shook hands with Dr. Conlon. Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate your frankness. The doctor smiled at me sadly. Do you have any questions? He asked. I shook my head. No. Thank you, Doctor. Not unless you can pause time. His expression was grim. Right, I sighed. I know you've done everything you can for me. I would like to thank you for that. I don't need help. I need bad things to stop happening to me. I'm afraid that even you, with all your learned knowledge and medical qualifications, are unable to do anything about that. At dinner that evening, my father begged me to return to the States with him. After everything that had transpired, I took little persuading. Father visited the house agents and instructed them to find a suitable tenant before booking our passage. When we boarded the Berlin on Saturday morning, Father and I stood on the deck watching until Southampton had disappeared entirely from view. I was delighted in the knowledge that we were at last leaving England. I was determined to never set foot in London again. And that was chapter 6. That was a tough chapter. It was one of those chapters where I had to just keep reading. You moved me to tears. I almost did too. It's easier to voice act something when you've lived something similar. Mr. A knows how to read it. Thank you. Acting is fun. Most of the time. But acting can also be painful. Because the easiest way to act is to draw upon your own experiences. Whether they're amazing, frantic, or gut-wrenching. That is the easiest way, because you know specifically, at least in your own way, how you should feel. So, sometimes I can nail it, and sometimes not. But it doesn't stop me from trying. It gets more lighthearted with some subtle humor. I didn't have anything wrong with that chapter, just to make sure that was obvious. It was very well written. It just hurt to read, that's all. My daughter trained as an actor. She inspired me to write this book. That's fantastic. I've never tried acting beyond voice acting. I would love to give it a go sometime, just to, experience it, see what it's like. I feel like it would only help advance my actual voice acting. But no, I've never actually done it beyond the voice. Okay, have a good sleep. I hope you get some solid rest. I know you're exhausted. You really should. Well, if the opportunity arises, I would give it a shot. Absolutely. Fine, I will take a drink. It's that perfect temperature. All right. We're about to read chapter 7, page 48. This one is simply titled Irene Adler. I love this time of night when the house is quiet. Yes, I work from home all the time. And 3 days out of 5, I get the house to myself. And it's nice and peaceful. All right. Let's read another chapter while we have the time. And then we'll find someone to raid. It's been a pleasure reading to you all this evening. 10 days later, our carriage arrived at our family home, a sprawling colonial townhouse in Trenton, New Jersey named Red Oaks. My cousin Estelle Conlon greeted us warmly, as well as her 3 young children, Isabella, Mia, and Noah. Estelle, a widow, was an attractive woman in her late 30s, slim-built with dark brown hair and hazel eyes. A sweet, loving woman from whom I inherited my predilection for reading. Before her marriage, Estelle trained as a nurse, skills that proved indispensable to my father and me. In addition to looking after Alfred, Estelle oversaw the running of the house, managed the domestic servants, and adopted the position of the primary housekeeper with considerable efficiency. Depressed and tormented by the harrowing events in London, I found adapting to family life challenging. I was at times plagued by voices, memories, and flashbacks. I spent hours alone in my bedroom, staring at the walls, trying to come to terms with the tragic events from my past. I refused to go downstairs or speak to anyone, despite Estelle's best efforts. Instead, I took my meals in my room to avoid unnecessary interaction. Reading and listening to classical music were my only distractions as I struggled with an ever-increasing sense of self-isolation. Gravely concerned for my well-being, my father arranged private counseling sessions with the renowned psychologist Harvey Walpole. But much to father's dismay, I dug in my heels and stubbornly refused to go. Oh Lord, speaking of classical music, I have a story from today. Well, I only have 2.5 pages, so I can't wait to hear it. After a lengthy discussion with my father late one afternoon, Estelle entered my bedroom. Sitting on the bed, she stared at me intently. So, what is the plan? Do you intend to kill yourself, Nin? At my startled expression, Estelle continued. What on earth is going on? You hardly touch your food. You refuse to speak to anyone, and you have not left this room for 3 days. Your father is going out of his mind with worry. I'm sorry, Estelle. I don't even know who I am anymore. Do you think I'm going mad? Estelle spoke to me softly as she gently stroked my hair. You're not going mad, Nin. On the contrary, you are half crazed with grief. You have suffered the unspeakable agony of losing your newly born daughter, watched her die in front of you. I cannot imagine what that must have felt like. That's what I can't get past, I said. It's my fault she's dead. Don't you see that Rosemary would still be alive if I had left Godfrey earlier? Instead, every night in my dreams, I see her not as a baby, but as the little girl she would have become. So what can it all mean? What is the point of me? It's not your fault you married a monster. You must stop blaming yourself. You need help. Estelle took me by the shoulders. Listen to me, young lady. You will attend the counseling sessions your father has arranged for you, and I will come with you. I understand you feel broken by the past, but you don't you see, my darling girl? Talking about it to a trained professional like Walpole can help you with the tools you need to feel better. Your first session is tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. I will call to collect you at 10. Promise me you will be ready. All right, Estelle. I nodded in resignation. I will do it for you and Father. But you must promise me you will not leave my side, not for one moment. Estelle shook her head, taking my hand in hers. I promise I will be with you, Neen, every step of the way. I will do everything in my power to help make you feel better again. I didn't have the heart to tell Estelle that you cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved. The following day, just after 10 o'clock, my father, Estelle, and I embarked on our journey to the New Jersey State Hospital. A trip that was to be one of many. At first, I found the treatment horribly invasive, having to relive the harrowing experiences time after time. Walpole's diagnosis was extreme melancholy after the death of my child. I was suffering from an acute episode of postpartum psychosis. With the help of the lithium prescribed for me on a short-term basis, my depression slowly began to lift. Estelle ensured I got plenty of fresh air and exercise, Walpole recommended. Every morning after breakfast, weather permitting, Estelle and the children would accompany me to Trenton's oldest park, Codwalder, situated close to our home in Parkside. We explored the Trenton City Museum and the Deer Park, enjoying leisurely strolls around the stream and lake. When we arrived home, I kept my mind occupied by reading poetry, conversing with my father and Estelle, or playing music on the gramophone. I also spent many happy hours interacting with Estelle's children, playing games, singing, and reading. Estelle and Father told me they would often stand at the bottom of the stairwell listening to the constant chatter and laughter. The children had clearly played a big part in restoring my well-being. As the year wore on, my spirits revived. Encouraged by my father and Estelle, I took on work as a private tutor. By the beginning of March 1895, I became restless. After much contemplation, I decided to take some time out to travel Europe. Traveling has always been one of my great passions. Later that evening, I informed my father and Estelle of my plans. I explained that, thanks to Walpole and the children, I felt ready to face the world again. My first port of call would be Milan. How I longed to meet up with my old friends from La Scala. Performing at the prestigious opera house had been one of the happiest periods of my life. During dinner, I read out a letter that arrived earlier that day from my close friend Sofia Stefanato, a talented mezzo-soprano. Sofia conveyed exciting news. She and Robert Moon, the musical director at La Scala, were engaged. The letter included an invitation to join them for a celebratory dinner on Tuesday, the 26th of March. Naturally, I was thrilled to hear of my friend's engagement. I immediately wrote back to Sophia, congratulating her and accepting the kind invitation. My father was delighted to see how much Sophia's letter had brightened my mood. He immediately scheduled my travel arrangements and subsequent passage to Milan. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to Chapter 8. It's lovely to end on a happy note. Now, Mama's House Gaming said, but maybe it's not completely appropriate. Okay. Well, feel free to tell me another time if you wish. Love it. Thank you. I'm really enjoying your book, Katie. I really am. I'm not the kind of person that sits here and reads somebody else's book blindly, might I add, because remember, I don't read ahead. I'm not the kind of person to sit here, read it, and just go, oh yeah, it's great. And then when I shut off the camera, go, oh my God. It's just not my style. I have openly discussed books on stream before where I've struggled with the story, and I've said so. I'm not rude or, ugly about it. I don't bully anybody. But if it's obvious to me that not enough went into the book, I'm going to say that. Exactly, Stunt Papa. There was a book I had to stop reading very, very early on. It was unfortunate. Because I'm sure the premise of the story would have made a great and interesting story. But unfortunately, it wasn't going to work. So when I say to you that I'm really loving your story, I mean it. So thank you again for letting me read it, but for also putting in the time and effort that you have. It's obvious that it's there. It is obvious. All right. On that magical note, I am going to find someone for us to raid. Now, keep in mind, if you want to hear more story reading, all you have to do is type in !iron. That will give you a Discord link. In about 20 minutes, I will be reading a different book in Discord. Can't read it on stream. I will get my hands slapped very hard because of copyright. But yes, Iron Flame. We're going to read a little bit of that this evening. We do that every Thursday, and it's a fun time. So you're welcome to join us if you wish. I was going to say if you like, and then I said wish, which turned into like. So if you like, you can join us. The story bumps up a notch when the celebrated detective makes an appearance. Oh, I imagine it does. I'm in no rush, though. I'm enjoying the story. So, page by page, I will absorb it all. Okay, who do we have on right now that we can go say hello to? We don't get to raid this fellow very often, but he's reading a book himself right now. What is he reading? Doomakey by Stephen King. Have a wonderful Friday, everyone, and an even better weekend. Yes, indeed. If I don't see you, please have a fantastic weekend. There's the raid message. If you wish to copy that, I would appreciate it. We're going to go raid Alan and Bill the Duck. Make sure I'm spelling that right. All right. There we go. Thank you for the resubs tonight, for the raid, for the chats, the engaging conversation. Your time that you spend with me is amazing. I love you dearly. I can't wait to hang out with you again on Sunday when we come back to this amazing story. But until then, as I always like to say, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and have a great night.